No one desired the disabled alien princess until a human asked, "Will you bond with me?" Part 1. The Forgotten Princess and the Human Visitor on the distant moon of Velaris. Pale light spread over silver towers that gleamed under two suns. The city was quiet, almost too quiet. Most people moved quickly through the streets, passing by the palace without a glance. Inside the grand halls of the palace, soft voices whispered, footsteps echoed, and doors stayed closed. This palace was home to Princess Leora, the youngest of the Valerian royal family. Princess Leora had never walked through the city like other royals. She had been born with a disability that made her movements slow and difficult. Her body could not keep up with the expectations of Valerian nobles. Her legs were weak, her arms tired quickly, and she often needed a support chair or a hand to hold. Though her mind was sharp, full of curiosity and dreams, the nobles of Velaris saw only weakness. For them, strength was beauty, speed, and perfection. Leora had none of those. Because of this, she lived mostly in isolation. Her chambers were large and bright, with windows that looked out over the city. She spent her days reading, learning the languages of other planets, studying maps of the stars, and imagining a world she could never reach on her own. Her younger brother, Prince Kieran, would sometimes visit, but even he did not know how to make her feel included in the court. The other nobles avoided her completely. They whispered behind their hands about her body, about her future, about who might take pity on her. Leora knew they saw her as less than a princess, and she felt it in every glance, every silence, every invitation she never received. One morning, a message arrived at the palace. It was from the Galactic Council, inviting Velaris to host a human diplomat. Humans were rare in this part of space, and their species had a reputation for strange emotions and unpredictable behavior. Leora had read about humans in books and news reports. They were seen as fragile yet stubborn, simple yet clever. Her interest piqued. Perhaps one day, she thought, she could meet one. But she knew it was unlikely. She was always left behind, forgotten, or hidden away. The human diplomat arrived in a sleek starship that hummed softly as it landed in the palace courtyard. The palace gates opened, revealing a tall man with brown hair and calm eyes. His name was Luke Carter. He wore simple clothes, unlike the ornate suits the Valerians favored. There was something human about his presence. He smiled politely, bowed, and walked through the gates without fear or hesitation. The nobles watched him carefully. Some frowned. "A human," one whispered. "They are soft and fragile. What can he offer our princess?" Luke was led to the main audience hall, a place of tall pillars and bright crystal lights. He was polite and spoke in the Valerian tongue he had learned for this visit. The nobles watched as he moved with ease, not rushing, not bowing too deeply, simply standing in the hall with quiet confidence. Princess Leora watched from her balcony above. She had never been invited to a public gathering. Today, she watched in silence, curious. There was a feeling she could not explain. The human seemed different. He did not glance away when he saw the empty balcony. He did not frown when he realized she watched unseen. He looked interested. After the ceremony ended, Luke wandered quietly into the palace gardens, where the sun reflected off the silver leaves. He walked slowly, taking in the smell of flowers and the sight of fountains. Leora, curious and bold, used her chair to move to the balcony nearest him. She leaned forward slightly, careful not to be seen, but her heart raced. She had never approached a stranger, never a human, and never anyone in this way. "Hello," Luke said softly, almost to himself. He looked up and his eyes widened slightly. He had noticed her. Leora froze. She had not expected him to notice. The nobles had taught her that no one ever truly saw her, that her body made her invisible. Yet here was someone who looked at her as if she mattered. "Hello," she whispered back, unsure if she could speak louder. He smiled gently. "I am Luke Carter. I came from Earth to meet the leaders of Velaris, but I think I just found someone more interesting." Her heart skipped a beat. No one had ever spoken to her like that. The nobles would call it flattery, but his voice carried no mockery. There was a curiosity in it, a warmth and a kindness she had not felt in years. "You are polite," she said, trying to sound calm. "Most ignore me." He shook his head. "I don't ignore anyone. Everyone has value. I want to learn about you. Will you tell me your name?" "Leora," she replied, surprised at how easy it felt to say. "Leora," he repeated, testing the sound. "It suits you." They talked quietly for a long while about nothing important and everything important. He asked about her interests, about her studies, about the books she read. She spoke about stars, about planets she would never visit, about dreams she kept hidden. He listened, genuinely, with questions and attention. From that moment, a strange connection formed. No one else had ever spoken to her as a person first. The nobles only spoke of politics, rules, or pity. Luke spoke to her as an equal. He asked questions not to show knowledge but to understand. He did not judge. He did not assume. Days passed and the council meetings began. Luke attended all events, always polite, always calm. Leora watched him sometimes, hoping to see his expression, his gestures. She realized she looked forward to his presence more than anything else in her quiet life. The nobles noticed as well. Whispers spread like wildfire. A human took interest in the forgotten princess. One morning, during a quiet breakfast in the sunlit hall, Luke asked her something unexpected. "Leora, may I speak with you alone today?" Her heart raced. No one had ever asked her to be alone with them willingly. She nodded and they moved to a small terrace overlooking the gardens. The wind blew softly, carrying the scent of flowers. She felt nervous and excited all at once. "Leora," he said, his voice calm and steady, "I have seen many things in my travels. I have met powerful leaders, rich nobles, strong warriors, but I have never met someone as thoughtful as you. Will you consider bonding with me?" The words echoed in her mind. Bonding was serious. In Valerian culture, it meant sharing life, trust, and responsibilities. It was usually reserved for those of perfect health and ability. She knew the nobles would scoff, the council might refuse. She had never imagined anyone would ask her, truly ask her, out of choice, not duty. She began, her voice trembling. "I don't know if I am worthy." "Worthy?" Luke said gently. "I do not measure worth by what you cannot do. I see who you are and I want to share life with you, not out of duty, not out of pity, but because I choose to." Her eyes filled with tears. For the first time she felt seen. For the first time she felt a future that included hope, respect, and connection. From that day, the palace felt different. She moved with a little more courage, spoke with a little more strength, and dared to imagine that perhaps her life could change. Nobles still whispered, but she no longer feared them as much. A human had seen her for herself, not for what she lacked, and it gave her power she never knew she had. And Luke, he did not stop seeing her. He continued to ask questions, to listen, to smile, to notice the small details others ignored. He asked about her favorite stories, about the stars she longed to visit, about the quiet thoughts she kept to herself. Each day, their connection grew. The bond was not official yet, but something deep had begun. In the silence of her chambers that evening, Leora whispered to herself, maybe I am not invisible after all." And for the first time in her life, she believed it could be true. Outside, the city glimmered under the twin suns, and the palace walls that once kept her hidden now felt like a place where something new could begin. The forgotten princess had not been seen before, but now a human diplomat had noticed her. And with him, perhaps the galaxy would begin to see her part two. A bond no one expected after their first meeting, Luke continued to visit the palace every day. He arrived not as a diplomat with papers and orders, but as someone who wanted to know Leora. He listened when she spoke, he laughed when she told small jokes, and he noticed the things others ignored, the way she arranged her books, the careful way she studied the maps of distant planets, the quiet strength in her thoughts. At first, The nobles were confused. Some looked at each other, whispering in corners. "Why does a human care for her?" one asked. "She is weak, slow, and fragile. This is unusual." Another shook his head. "Perhaps he does not understand our ways. He will tire quickly." But Luke did not tire. He was patient. He asked questions not to show intelligence, but to learn from her. He asked what she liked to study, which planets fascinated her, what stories she remembered from childhood. Leora found herself opening up more than ever before. She told him of Velaris's hidden gardens, the libraries that held old maps, and the stars she dreamed of seeing one day. Luke listened and asked gently, encouraging her to think, to speak, to imagine. One afternoon, while the twin suns were low in the sky, Luke asked Leora to join him in the garden again. She hesitated for a moment, worried about the whispers of nobles, but something in her heart told her she could trust him. She used her support chair and moved slowly to the garden terrace. Luke was already there, leaning lightly against a fountain. The water sparkled in the soft light. "Leora," he said softly, "you have knowledge and courage that no one else seems to notice. I want to know more about you, not because I must, but because I want to." Her heart quickened. Words like these had never been spoken to her. Nobles only spoke of duty, rules, or pity. Humans rarely came into their lives, and when they did, they often treated Valerians as curiosities. But Luke's words were different. They carried respect, interest, and a choice. I do not know if I am," she began, unsure how to finish. "Worthy," he guessed. "Leora, I do not measure worth by what others think or by what your body can do. I measure it by who you are, by your choices, by your heart, and I want to share that with you." She looked at him, unsure if this was a dream or reality. Why me?" she asked. "Because you are Leora," he said simply. "Because you have a mind, a spirit, and courage. Others ignore it, but I see it, and I want to bond with you if you will have me." The words fell slowly between them. In Valerian culture, a bond was serious. It meant sharing life, responsibilities, trust, and connection. It was normally offered to those strong in body and mind. No one expected a human to choose a princess who was weak in body, and no one expected Leora to have a choice at all. She looked down, unsure. Her hands trembled slightly. "But my body, I cannot move well, I cannot run, I cannot fight. Others would laugh, they would call you foolish." He reached gently toward her hand, careful and steady. "I do not care what others say. I care about you. If you choose me, it will be because I asked and you agreed. Not for duty, not for pity, but because we both want it." For the first time in her life, Leora felt something she had never felt before: power and choice. She realized that her life had been controlled by whispers, by pity, by rules that ignored her thoughts. Now, a human had offered her something completely different. He offered her respect and a voice in her own life. I will think about it," she said, though her heart already leaned toward yes. "Take your time," he said with a gentle smile. "There is no rush. I am here." In the days that followed, Luke and Leora spent more time together. They walked slowly in the palace gardens, studied star charts, and shared quiet meals in the sunlit halls. She learned about his home planet, Earth, and he learned about Velaris and its history. They laughed together, sometimes at simple jokes, sometimes at mistakes made in translation. Nobles continued to watch. Some shook their heads. "It is impossible," one whispered. "A human cannot bond with a princess who is weak. It will fail." Others looked with curiosity. "Perhaps humans are different. Perhaps they see things we do not." Leora began to notice changes in herself. She no longer feared the whispers. She spoke up more in her chambers, shared her thoughts with her tutors, and even smiled at visitors who came to the palace. She realized that Luke's belief in her made her believe in herself. She began to move with a little more confidence, to push her chair without as much worry, to explore corners of the palace she had avoided for years. One morning, the council called a meeting. They were not pleased with the attention the human brought. Some noble houses openly criticized him. He encourages weakness, they said. He chooses someone unworthy. Luke stood calmly before them. I do not see weakness, he said simply. I see thought, intelligence, and courage. The princess is not less because of her body. She is more because of her mind, her patience, and her heart. I choose to bond with her because she is remarkable, not because she is perfect in the way you define it. The council murmured. Leora listened from the back of the room, her heart swelling with pride. No one had ever defended her like this. No one had ever said her worth was more than what her body could do. That evening, Luke returned to her chambers. You heard, he said softly. Others may not understand, but I do. I asked you to bond with me because I choose you. Will you consider it now? She thought of the past years, of the silence, the whispers, the isolation. She thought of the warmth in his eyes, the patience in his voice, the respect in his words, and slowly she nodded. Yes, she said quietly, I will bond with you. He smiled, but not in a way that made her feel like a child. It was a smile of partnership, of respect, of shared choice. Then we begin together, he said, holding out his hand. Their hands met, and a small energy seemed to flow between them. In Valerian culture, a bond created a subtle connection of thought and feeling. It was not magic, but something deeper, trust made visible. Leora felt it, small at first, a warmth in her chest. Luke felt it too, a quiet certainty that this choice was right. The news spread quickly through the palace. Some nobles were shocked, some were angry, but most were silent. No one had expected a human to choose her, and no one had expected her to accept. But the bond was not yet official. It had to be tested through challenges of harmony, patience, and endurance. The nobles assumed they would fail. They were wrong. As the sun set over Velaris, Leora looked out from her balcony, watching the light reflect off the city. For the first time, she felt hope, excitement, and courage. She was no longer invisible. She had been chosen, and she had chosen in return. And Luke, he was not just a diplomat. He was a friend, a partner, someone who saw her in a way no one else ever had. Together, they would face the trials ahead and perhaps change more than just their own lives. In the quiet of her chambers, Leora whispered to herself, I am not weak. I am seen. I am chosen. And for the first time, she felt ready to step forward into a life she had never imagined possible. Part 3. Strength beyond the body. The day of the bond trial arrived. The Council of Velaris had prepared a series of challenges to test the compatibility, strength, and harmony of any pair who wished to bond. Traditionally, the trials were designed for those who were physically strong, fast, and precise. The nobles believed that Leora would fail quickly, that the human would grow frustrated, and that the bond would be seen as a mistake. Luke and Leora entered the trial hall together. It was large, circular, with high ceilings and soft light from crystal panels. The first challenge was simple in theory. Move across a series of platforms suspended over a shallow water basin. Other royals had completed this task by running and jumping quickly. Leora could not run, could not jump, and her chair could not roll over uneven surfaces. Luke noticed her hesitation. He took her hand gently. We will do this together, he said. We do not need to do it the way others do. We will find our own way. He lifted a small, portable platform he had carried in quietly, placing it on the uneven section. Together they moved slowly, step by careful step. Leora felt her heart race with fear and excitement. Nobles watching whispered, impossible. But Luke smiled calmly, encouraging her, praising every careful movement. By the end of the first trial, Leora had crossed the basin. She did it not by strength, but by thinking carefully, using strategy and relying on teamwork. The council murmured, unsure of what to make of it. A human and a disabled princess had succeeded where others assumed failure. The next challenge involved knowledge and observation. They were placed in a room filled with holographic displays of star systems. The task was to identify patterns and locate a hidden signal that only one person could see at a time. Many royals rushed, thinking speed would win the day. Leora paused. She studied the map slowly, noticing connections others missed. Luke guided her, asking questions that helped her think, not giving answers but supporting her insight. She found the hidden signal. Calmly, quietly, she announced it. The council gasped. They had underestimated her mind, her patience, her ability to think clearly under pressure. Luke smiled proudly, squeezing her hand. "You see what I see," he said softly. The third trial was more physical but adaptable. It involved carrying a glowing orb through a maze while avoiding moving barriers. Most expected Leora to fail. Luke had already considered how to adjust. He carried the heavier orb while she navigated, but she directed him, calling out paths and solutions. Her mind guided the action, turning what seemed like a weakness into a strength. Together, they completed the maze. Observers could not deny the pair's harmony. The trial was not about raw power, but about teamwork, patience, strategy, and trust. Leora's disability became irrelevant because they adapted. The human diplomat's patience allowed her to shine in ways no one had expected. During a brief break, Leora and Luke sat by a fountain in the trial hall. She smiled shyly, still catching her breath. "I never thought I could do something like this," she admitted. "You did it," Luke said simply. "Because you are smart, patient, and brave. Strength is not just in muscles, it is in mind, heart, and will." She felt a warmth she had never felt before. It was not pride in herself alone, but in the bond they were building. She realized that the connection between them made her stronger. She was no longer alone, no longer hidden. She had a partner who believed in her. The final trial was the council's most difficult. It tested emotion, patience, and trust. Pairs were placed in a room with illusions designed to frighten and confuse them. Lights shifted, images moved, sounds echoed. Many royals panicked, losing focus and direction. Leora felt fear grip her chest. She could not move quickly, could not run, could not hide. She turned to Luke. He held her hand firmly. "Trust me," he said. "We face this together." She closed her eyes, listened to his voice, and let it guide her. Slowly she moved through the illusions, calling out to him, following his calm instructions. He did not lead her but walked beside her, steady and patient. Step by careful step, they reached the center. When they arrived, the illusions faded. The council watched silently. No one had expected them to succeed. Leora's calm thinking, patience, and courage had carried them through. The human diplomat's support, trust, and respect had amplified her strength. Together, they had shown a harmony that was impossible to ignore. After the trials, the council gathered to speak. Some noble houses were furious. "This was luck," one argued. "A weak princess and a human cannot be a true bond. It undermines our traditions." Luke stepped forward. "This was not luck," he said calmly. "This was proof that strength is not only measured by the body. It is measured by trust, patience, intelligence, and care. Leora showed every quality a leader needs. I do not choose her because she is weak or strong. I choose her because she is remarkable, because she is herself, and because we can be stronger together." Leora spoke then, her voice steady. "I was afraid for many years," she said. "Afraid I was not enough. But I have learned that my mind, my patience, and my courage matter. I have learned that being different does not mean being weak. And I have learned that someone can see me as I am, not as they expect me to be." The council was silent. No one could deny the results of the trials. The bond between Luke and Leora was real. It was strong, not because of muscle or speed, but because of trust, intelligence, and respect. The whispers in the hall quieted. Slowly, admiration replaced doubt in some eyes. After the official announcement, the nobles had no choice but to recognize the bond. It was unusual, unprecedented, and remarkable. Luke and Leora had not only succeeded in the trials, but they had also changed the way many saw strength, ability, and partnership. Later, in the quiet of her chambers, Leora looked at her reflection. She saw not weakness but determination. She saw not a body limited by rules but a mind capable of great things. She felt the warmth of the bond with Luke and knew it would only grow stronger. "We did it," she whispered. Luke was beside her, smiling. "Yes, we did," he said. Together, that night the palace felt different. Halls that had once seemed silent and cold now seemed filled with quiet energy. Leora moved through them with new confidence. Nobles still watched, but their whispers no longer frightened her. She had shown them that strength could come in many forms, and that the choice to see it mattered more than tradition. As she looked out over the city from her balcony, she thought of the stars she had always dreamed about. The galaxy seemed larger now, full of possibilities she had never imagined. And Luke, standing beside her quietly, reminded her that she was no longer alone. Together they had faced trials, overcome fear, and proven that what truly mattered was not the body, but the mind, heart, and courage to act. In the soft light of the twin suns, Leora whispered to herself, "I am not less. I am more than they thought. And together we can reach the stars." And Luke, standing silently beside her, knew that this bond was only the beginning. It was a partnership that would face challenges yet unseen. But for now, they had shown the galaxy that strength came in many forms, and that trust, respect, and care could overcome even the deepest prejudice. Part 4. The galaxy learns a lesson. After the bond trial, life in the palace began to change. Leora moved with more confidence, spoke more freely, and even laughed without fear of judgment. Luke stayed by her side, guiding, supporting, and encouraging her. The council had recognized the bond, but not everyone was pleased. Some noble houses whispered behind closed doors, plotting ways to discredit the pairing. The leader of one house, Lord Varen, was furious. He saw the human as an intruder and Leora as weak. "A princess who cannot walk like us," he muttered to his advisors. "This bond undermines everything. It cannot last. We will show them it is a mistake." Varen devised a plan. He would sabotage the bond trial's results by creating a situation that would test Leora in a way she could not handle. He called for a public demonstration of planetary defense. Normally, the trials of diplomacy and strategy were theoretical, but Varen arranged for a simulated attack using automated drones to challenge their command and coordination. On the day of the demonstration, Leora and Luke arrived at the central control chamber. Monitors displayed holographic images of drones approaching Velaris. Other nobles watched, expecting chaos. "Watch closely," one whispered. "The weak princess will fail, and the human will have no choice but to admit defeat." Luke looked at Leora calmly. "We face this together," he said. "Trust your mind, your instincts, and me. We can handle this." Leora nodded, taking a deep breath. She had faced fear before in the bond trials, but this was different. This was public, deliberate, and designed to shame her. She steadied herself and focused. The drones advanced. Their movements were unpredictable, designed to test coordination and speed. Leora quickly noticed patterns in their flight paths. She instructed Luke on which defense systems to activate, which turrets to aim, and which barriers to raise. Luke followed her guidance without hesitation, trusting her decisions completely. Nobles gasped. Leora's mind worked faster than they expected. She calculated angles, timing, and sequences with precision. She was not strong in body, but she was brilliant in strategy. Together, she and Luke directed the defenses, neutralizing the drones one by one. By the end of the exercise, the drones were defeated. The palace erupted in stunned silence. The nobles who had expected failure could not deny what they saw. The disabled princess had led the defense successfully, with a human partner supporting her every step. Lord Varen stepped forward, anger on his face. "This is impossible," he shouted. "A weak princess could not have done this without cheating or luck." Luke remained calm. "There was no cheating," he said firmly. "We succeeded because Leora is intelligent, brave, and capable. She directed the operation and I followed her guidance. Strength is not only in the body, it is in the mind, in patience, and in trust. This is the power I see. The council watched quietly. Some members were impressed, others reluctant to admit it. The demonstration had forced them to recognize that humans and those who seemed weak in traditional ways could show true strength. After the public exercise, Leora retreated with Luke to the palace gardens. She was tired but exhilarated. "I never thought I could do something like that," she said softly. "You did," Luke said with a smile. "And you did it with calm, intelligence, and courage. You have shown everyone that ability is not always visible. Some things are seen only when people look closely." As days passed, news of the successful defense spread across Velaris and neighboring planets. Humans began to gain respect not as warriors, but as thinkers, adapters, and partners who valued intelligence and loyalty over brute strength. Leora became an example for others. Disabled individuals, once hidden or ignored, were now noticed. Nobles began to question their prejudices, but not all change was easy. Some noble houses refused to accept the bond. They continued to plot, creating small obstacles for Leora, hoping to embarrass her in front of the council. Luke remained by her side, encouraging her to speak up and act with dignity. He reminded her that they were a team and that her voice mattered as much as anyone else's. One day, Varen tried again. He arranged a diplomatic negotiation with a neighboring planet, deliberately setting conditions that would confuse and frustrate Leora. He expected her to falter, to show hesitation, and for the human to step in and lose credibility. Luke and Leora entered the negotiation room together. Holographic displays projected maps of trade routes, resources, and planetary positions. Leora studied the information carefully. She noticed patterns, discrepancies, and potential solutions. Luke watched, supporting her as she spoke clearly and confidently. She presented her plan, explaining resource allocation, trade routes, and security measures. The neighboring planet's representatives nodded in approval, impressed by her clarity and foresight. Varen's plan to embarrass her failed. The council watched silently, slowly realizing that the pair's bond was stronger than tradition, politics, or prejudice. After the negotiation, Leora and Luke walked in the palace gardens. The twin suns were low, casting golden light over silver leaves. "They will never stop trying to test us," Leora said quietly. "Perhaps," Luke said calmly, "but we have shown them what we are capable of. Every test they give us is an opportunity to prove that strength is not always visible, and together we will always succeed." Leora smiled. She realized that the bond was more than a partnership. It was a way to show the galaxy that humans and those once considered weak could inspire change. Their successes were not only personal victories, but lessons for all. Word of their accomplishments spread to other systems. Humans became known as species who saw value where others did not, who respected intelligence, courage, and patience. Valerians began to reconsider their traditions, laws, and attitudes. Children who were once ignored or hidden were now noticed. Those who could not move quickly or who were physically different were slowly being included in ways they had never been before. One evening, Leora stood on her balcony, looking out over the city. The moons reflected in the silver towers. She thought of the trials, the challenges, and the obstacles they had faced together. Luke stood quietly beside her, as always, steady and calm. "We have changed something," she said softly, "not just for us, but for everyone who will come after." "Yes," Luke said. "And it will continue. The bond is not just about us. It is about showing what is possible when people see each other for who they truly are." For the first time, Leora felt a deep sense of purpose. She realized that her life was no longer just about surviving or hiding. She had a voice, a partner, and a mission to help others see that strength came in many forms. She could lead, teach, and inspire, not despite her disability, but because she had learned to turn what others saw as weakness into strength. As night fell and the stars appeared over Velaris, the palace felt alive with possibility. The galaxy had learned a lesson. Strength is not measured only by the body, but by the mind, heart, courage, and the ability to trust and work together. Leora held Luke's hand, feeling the bond between them. It was a bond of respect, choice, and shared vision. Together, they would continue to face challenges, prove the value of humanity, and show that even those who are overlooked can shape the future of a planet, and perhaps the galaxy itself. Part 5. Chosen, not pitied after the trials, the palace felt different. Leora moved through its halls with quiet confidence, no longer hiding in shadowed corners. Her voice carried when she spoke, and her ideas were listened to with respect. The nobles who had once doubted her began to nod, some reluctantly, recognizing her intelligence and courage. Luke stayed at her side, guiding, encouraging, and supporting her. Together, they had faced every challenge, every obstacle, and every test the council and rival nobles set before them. The bond between Leora and Luke was now official. It was not a bond of pity or obligation, but one of choice and respect. They shared thoughts, plans, and feelings in ways few others could understand. In Valerian culture, such bonds were rare and sacred. The council recognized the human's value not as a servant but as a partner. The galaxy began to take notice. One morning, the palace received ambassadors from nearby systems. They had heard of the bond, of Leora's strength, and of the human who had chosen her freely. They came with questions and curiosity. Many expected arrogance, a display of superiority or conflict. Instead, they found humility, intelligence, and cooperation. Leora led the discussions, her mind sharp and clear. She explained Velaris's policies, trade plans, and alliances. She offered solutions that were fair and thoughtful. Luke assisted only when necessary, offering suggestions and support, but letting her voice remain strong. The ambassadors left impressed, not by power or weapons, but by leadership, vision, and partnership. As word spread, Valerians began to change. Schools that once excluded those with disabilities now welcomed them. Children who had hidden away now participated in lessons, games, and training. The laws that had punished or ignored those deemed weak were reconsidered. Leora and Luke's bond became an example for the planet. Leadership and value were not measured by strength or appearance, but by intelligence, courage, and character. One afternoon, Leora and Luke walked through the palace gardens, now more alive than ever. Flowers bloomed under the twin suns, fountains sparkled, and children laughed while learning from tutors who had once ignored them. Leora stopped near a fountain, looking at the reflections of the city. "I never imagined this," she said softly. "A few months ago, I was hidden, ignored, and forgotten. Now people listen, they watch, they notice. It feels strange but good." Luke smiled. "It is because you allowed yourself to be seen, because you acted with courage, patience, and thought. You didn't wait for others to change. You showed them the truth through your actions. And you," she said, turning to him, "you saw me when no one else did. Not as weak, not as broken, but as capable. That made all the difference." "We did this together," Luke said. "That is what a bond is. Partnership, choice, respect. We share the journey, and the world sees both of us, not just one." The palace buzzed with news from distant systems. Humans were gaining a reputation for seeing value where others refused to look. Diplomats, traders, and explorers spoke of Earth as a place of respect, fairness, and insight. Valerians began to invite more humans to participate in their councils and projects, not as servants or curiosities, but as equal partners. Lord Varen and other doubters continued to watch, frustrated that tradition could not overcome truth. Some refused to accept the changes, but many found themselves quietly inspired. The children of Velaris, especially those who had been hidden or ignored, now had role models in Leora. They saw that limitations in the body did not mean weakness, and that courage and intelligence could overcome fear and prejudice. One evening, Leora and Luke stood on a balcony overlooking the city. The twin suns were setting, casting gold and silver over the towers. She felt a sense of peace she had never known. For years, she had felt invisible. For years, she had feared being left behind. Now she felt chosen not out of pity but out of respect and true connection. "Do you think we can reach the stars?" she asked quietly. "Yes," Luke said, taking her hand. "Not just literally, but in everything we do. We have shown that change is possible. That respect, courage, and partnership matter more than strength or appearance. Together, we can face anything." The following months brought new opportunities. Leora began visiting schools and academies to teach diplomacy, strategy, and leadership. Luke accompanied her, sharing knowledge of human culture, history, and innovation. Their presence inspired others across Velaris and neighboring systems. Those who had been ignored found new confidence. Those who had doubted began to reconsider their prejudices. As their influence grew, the bond became symbolic. It represented the possibility of change, the importance of choice, and the value of seeing others fully. Leora and Luke were no longer just a princess and a diplomat. They were partners, leaders, and examples of what the galaxy could become when people were judged by character, not appearance. One day, in a quiet moment in the gardens, Leora paused to watch a group of children playing. One small girl ran past, stumbling slightly but laughed and continued. Leora remembered the days when she herself had been cautious, hidden, and afraid of failing. She smiled, feeling the warmth of hope. "We have done more than we thought," she said to Luke. "Yes," he said. "And there is more to do, but every step matters. Every voice, every choice, every act of respect counts." As the sun set, Leora felt a sense of pride and purpose. She had been chosen, not because others felt sorry for her, but because someone saw her true self. She had chosen in return, trusting a human who valued her mind, heart, and courage. Together, they had changed traditions, inspired people, and shown that even those overlooked could shape the future. The galaxy was watching. Humans were no longer just visitors. They were allies, thinkers, and partners. Valerians were no longer just traditional. They were learning to value every individual. And Leora, the once-forgotten princess, was now a leader, a symbol, and a partner in a bond that would influence generations to come. As night fell and stars appeared over Velaris, Leora and Luke stood side by side. They looked at the city, the moons, and the distant planets beyond. "We are ready," she said softly. "Yes," Luke agreed. "Together, we are ready for anything." And in that moment, the galaxy seemed full of possibility. The bond between a human and a disabled princess was no longer a curiosity or a challenge. It was a proof of strength beyond the body, courage beyond expectation, and partnership beyond prejudice. The story of Leora and Luke spread far and wide, not as a tale of pity, but as a tale of choice, respect, and inspiration. Children, leaders, and travelers remembered it. Humans became known as those who see value where others cannot, and Leora became a living example that the greatest strength comes not from perfection, but from heart, mind, and the courage to act. In the quiet of the palace, Leora whispered to herself, "I am chosen. I am not weak, and together we can change the stars." And Luke, standing beside her, held her hand, steady and calm, knowing that their journey had only just begun. Together, they had proven that humanity's true power was in seeing, respecting, and choosing what others ignored, and that a bond built on trust and care could shape the galaxy itself.